Yeah, I didn't turn on my mic over here. Dang it! Well, at least I caught it pretty quick. And they had none of the necessary job skills for urban post-war America. His mother and I walked the streets looking for work, recalled Vernon. Often it was snowing. Eventually I got work with a local company. His parents kept their unhappiness from Elvis. He was too busy settling into his new life at the L.O. Humes High School, said this teacher, Susie Johnson. He melted easily into his new life, though we used to give him a bad time because of his English. It was atrocious. And still is, she remarked after listening to a Presley interview on a local radio station after he had achieved stardom. George Klein, a fellow student of Elvis's, recalled, "I first noticed Elvis when we were singing in class one day. He sang Cold, Cold, Icy Fingers, and there was something about the way he sang that stayed with me for weeks and weeks." Each day, Presley took his guitar to school, which he had bought at a local pawn shop from $7 he scrounged together, and kept the instrument in his locker. He would then play it incessantly during his lunch break. When he found people listening to him, he began to grow those sideboards. When questioned about this a few years later, Elvis replied, "I wanted to appear older to the other boys. I thought if I grew sideboards and a mustache, it would help. Well, I couldn't manage the mustache, so I had to settle for the sideboards. Frankly, I'm sick of them now, but the fans won't let me change." As soon as he was old enough, Elvis helped the family with odd jobs to pay the bills. While attending high school, he worked as a movie usher at the Lowe's State Theater at a salary of $25 a week. Most of Elvis's pals took similar jobs to earn date money, but there was no date for Elvis. His weekly earnings went into the family fund. Unlike other entertainers who had come up the hard way, Elvis never imagined he would one day be up on the silver screen. "I never dreamed, no such a thought," he told a journalist. "People from my station in life seldom make it that far. Yes, I was an exception. We hated to take his money," said Gladys Presley years later, "but we needed it." And when Elvis realized he could make more for the family by driving a truck, he quit the theater job straight away. He was always thinking of us. But this is where fate rewarded Elvis Aaron Presley. There's a cute wedding picture here. I'll show it to you in a minute. Driving his delivery truck, that Elvis spotted the sign that was to change his life and that of the music world forever. Following graduation from Humes, Elvis obtained a job as a truck driver for $35 per week. It was while driving around Memphis in 1953 that Presley often passed the Sun Recording Company. A sign in the window read, "Recordings, $1." On one of his trips past Sun, he vowed to stop in during a lunchtime and record a song for his mother's birthday. He did, and that was the beginning of it all. Elvis thought at the end of the session that was the end of it, but Sun Recording's owner, Sam Phillips, was impressed with his voice. Several days later, Phillips remembered the boy with the mellow voice and called Elvis to ask him if he could return to the studio to record the song Without You. The ballad was a failure. Phillips was disappointed, but fate again stepped in and gave Elvis a boot upstairs. Right in the booty. After being told to forget it, Elvis on his own started to sing with a rock and roll beat. Phillips and everyone else in the studio who heard this new music stood transfixed. They had never heard or seen anyone like this dynamic young man with a guitar pound out a song with such fervor. Under Phillips's direction, Sun Recording taped Elvis singing "That's All Right, Mama" and "I Don't Care If the Sun Don't Shine." Then Phillips had the disc played on a local radio station. The record sold 7,000 copies that first week in Memphis. Word of this hot young star filtered through the South to a country slicker known as Colonel Thomas A. Parker. That guy, if you don't know, was a joy. Frickin' con man. He agreed to manage Elvis Aaron Presley and his career at 50 cents on the dollar, or so it was rumored, plus lucrative side deals. Colonel Tom Parker, the name he chose for himself, was a rather interesting individual. As a young man, he arrived in the United States by very strange means. Parker's clandestine background was the most compelling reason why Elvis Presley never played a single overseas concert, despite the millions of dollars that were frequently offered for international appearances. I think he just, was not allowed to travel because he had a really shady past that came up later on. Plus, he had a gambling addiction, so I think he didn't want to get too far away from the casinos and such. Did Elvis ever... Oh, I forgot to show you guys that picture of Elvis and Priscilla. Look how cute they are. Aww. Did Elvis ever suspect that Colonel Tom Parker of Huntington, West Virginia, wasn't who or what he claimed? What was I just telling? Gladys always viewed with suspicion the fact that Parker's title was honorary, not earned in service but granted by a crony, probably for cash consideration. What would Gladys Vernon and Elvis Presley have thought if they had lived to learn that Colonel Tom Parker, besides not being a real colonel, was not even a bona fide mint julep and straw hat plantation colonel? Parker was actually Andreas van Kuijk, an illegal immigrant from Holland fleeing from a slight problem with the Netherlands politie. Through self-promotion and dogged attention to detail, Parker rose above whatever and whomever he left behind in the land of tulips, to become one of the most powerful and least understood managers in show business. Because he allegedly entered the United States as an illegal alien, Parker could not afford to travel outside the U.S. for fear of being discovered. See, told ya. This was why Parker never allowed Presley to perform outside the States. He always had to be with my boy whenever Elvis worked. Promoters often wondered why Elvis never made appearances, for example, in England, Germany, or Australia, countries in which many had begged for a chance to promote an Elvis concert. Parker was afraid he would not be allowed to re-enter the country because of moral turpitude, a catch-all phrase used by the INS. But Parker did manage to guide Elvis to a very pinnacle of stardom and fame internationally, with concerts in the U.S., movies, television, and recordings. By the time Parker entered the twilight world of carnivals in the backwaters of the South, where they flourished for lack of any other colorful divertissement, he was a master of carny. hold on. He was a master at Carney Flim Flams, a purveyor of snake oil, usually castor oil with color, haddock tonic, and foot-long hot dogs. These sausages were, in reality, regular wieners cut in half, with each end sticking out of a genuine foot-long bun. When the mark complained, the colonel would point to a real foot longer lying in the dirt, claiming the customer dropped it. In the late 30s, he worked an act called Tom Parker's Dancing Turkeys. Could you imagine? And an ancient, scratchy recording of Turkey in the Straw. The flip of a switch, the music would come on and the birds began to gyrate. The colonel, as he was known by then, had a hot plate under the sawdust and a thermostat which he turned up and down in perfect time to the music. That's pretty freaking mean. In the 40s, he turned to country music, managing singers like Eddie Arnold, Gene Austin, and Hank Snow. He produced a record for Senator Dudley LeBlanc, the last of the old-time Southern pitchmen, called Haddockle Boogie. After the tonic, the senator and Parker were flim-flamming as a cure-all of everything from gout to hemorrhoids. I'm still not sure who came out best, laughed the senator from his headquarters in the Louisiana State House. I found out later he was making as much as I was. The senator admitted to making $20 million on Haddockle over the years. Then the colonel found Elvis. That's a lot of money for castor oil. Holy shnikes. Elvis found drugs to keep him going after Parker had propelled him to the top of the show business heap. In an interview he did for radio and print a year or two following Elvis's death, his former bodyguard, Sonny West, opened up about his charge. Elvis, the performer, was at odds with Elvis, the man he preferred to be, said West. When he gave a good show and felt he had a good audience, he was sky high. He had confidence, but I think Elvis, the legend, helped destroy Elvis, the person. The image got so big that it reduced Elvis, the person, to a smaller level, making it harder for him to cope with the image. According to West, it was in the early 70s that Presley's dissipation really began in earnest. Most of us had taken diet pills with him, which at the time gave us a false sense of security. It made you feel like you could do anything. Elvis told us he started taking Benzedrine and Dexedrine while in the Army. After the uppers came the sleeping pills to counteract the other pills being prescribed for him by a Memphis doctor, Dr. George Nicopolis. Presley, West said, even started experimenting with pain pills such as codeine to counteract the high of diet pills. He also bought a PDR. Look, I think you see it. It's on the front porch. Sorry. Physician's desk reference and started studying it. West revealed he would tell doctors that he would like to have, and some doctors would give it to him, especially Nicopolis. Many people told us they felt Parker did little to stop Presley's drug use as a means of keeping Elvis in line to work constantly, and to keep the money flowing into Presley's coffers, and also into the Colonel's gambling fund. After spending 16 years with Presley, West noted that Elvis did not need pills to enhance himself. He did it out of boredom. He had that charisma, but the pills helped him escape from the realities of not being able to do too much in between his stage performances. Elvis loved to perform. He would be sky high, then back to his bedroom. He would lock himself in there until the next day, when he left for the next city, said West, describing Elvis on the road. At Graceland, his bedroom became Presley's retreat for weeks at a time. And when everything was closed to the public, that's when Elvis would go out. Around 1970, Presley started losing interest in everything around him. From 1972 on, it was downhill, and it was bad, West related. Shows had to be canceled. He couldn't get completely awake, and then he'd have to cancel parts of tours. A satellite-beamed TV show on January 1973, which had a projected audience of close to 1 billion people throughout the world, put Presley back into shape. He had trimmed his weight from 240 pounds to 170 pounds. "That show was beautiful," said West. "Elvis looked fantastic." He met that challenge, but then he started going downhill again. During his years with Priscilla, West said, Elvis looked great. But after their separation and divorce, it created a void in him. Something abruptly was taken out of his life. He felt remorse. Yet, West firmly believed that Presley was not the marrying kind. Part of him wanted to be freed, he stated, but he also seemed to want to be with Priscilla and their daughter. Sonny West and Elvis were a few years apart in age, but for 16 years the two men were as close as brothers. In July 1976, the relationship that began when West first met Presley 18 years earlier was shattered. A hasty firing by Vernon Presley left West hurt and bitter. But when we interviewed West 3 years later, he held no bitterness or rancor towards Elvis. According to Elvis's stepbrother, Billy Stanley, Elvis began taking prescription drugs as a way to get himself out of a funk and into a performance. This confirms what Sonny West told us. Elvis used the drugs when he made movies he didn't like or recorded songs that he felt weren't worth recording, but did at Parker's insistence. It was after Priscilla left in 1972 that Elvis turned more to the prescription drugs, which would, in a few years, create a polypharmacy condition within his system. The drugs were meant to be a temporary solution to temporary problems, according to Stanley, whose mother Dee married Vernon Presley following Gladys's death. But pills had a permanent effect on the king. Elvis told Stanley at 4 o'clock one morning that Dr. Nick's sedatives weren't working. "Go wake him up. I need something more." "Elvis, it's 4 in the morning," Stanley told him. "Wake him. That's what he's here for. That's why I pay him." Such was the state of Elvis Presley's dependence on drugs, and by this time it included cocaine. By 1975, 2 years before his death, Presley's health had declined drastically. Because he realized the eyes of the world would be on him during the following, the autopsy on the remains of Elvis Aaron Presley, Dr. Francisco sought the advice of Los Angeles County Coroner Thomas Noguchi. He followed Noguchi's dictum in a high-profile case. He appointed a panel of distinguished pathologists to assist him with the autopsy. This would assure the public that the autopsy on Elvis Presley was properly performed. Unfortunately, the findings of that autopsy, instead of quelling public suspicion, aroused a heated controversy which is still going on today, almost 13 years following the king's death. When was this book put out? Man, this was an expensive book, too. What? Hold on a second, guys. Gotta see when this was published. 1991. After Francisco made the announcement that the only drugs detected in Presley's system were those prescribed by Nicopolis for hypertension and a colon problem, the audience was incredulous. What had happened to the Percodan, Quaalude, Dilaudid, and the other pills that made up Elvis's 9-pack of drugs, which he always carried with him? Elvis, according to Stanley's account, had been given a 9-pack the night before he died, and he received a second pack about 9 the following morning, approximately 18 hours before he was found by Ginger Aldine on his bathroom floor. See, that's weird because I heard Priscilla found him. Un momento, por favor. Not Priscilla, his daughter. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't. Lisa Marie. I heard Lisa Marie found him, which would be devastating. How could all those drugs not show up in an autopsy? ABC TV did a news special questioning the Francisco report. It brought up statements made by another of the Presley entourage that Elvis had loaned Dr. Nick the money to buy a house, and also said that a Los Angeles dentist would give Elvis any drugs he wanted. ABC also pointed out that there had been no police investigation into his death, which is usually the case when a sudden unexplained death is reported. ABC also reported that Elvis's internal organs had been removed and discarded. What the hell? The network demanded that Elvis's body be exhumed and a more thorough investigation begun. Rumors of a drug overdose were already circulating around the country and were rampant in and around Memphis. Francisco dismissed all of them with the statement that there was no indication of any kind of drug abuse except for the 2 for hypertension and a colon problem. Why? That statement by Francisco turned out to be the understatement of that or any other year. It turned out many months following the Presley autopsy that Elvis had died with an almost unheard of variety of drugs in his system. Among them were 1, an antihistamine, often used to control hay fever and allergies. 2, codeine, a derivative of opium, used to relieve pain. 3, Demerol, a narcotic used as a sedative. 4, several tranquilizers, including Valium. And 5, a hypnotic sedative. But the biggest shock of all was to come later. So here's a picture, a very early Elvis Presley film, female co-star unidentified. Who is she? Makes you wonder. She looks familiar, but it's probably from one of the millions of movies or whatever that he made. In total, there were 8 different drugs in Presley's blood, but all were harmless prescription drugs. There was no trace of illegal drugs such as heroin, cocaine, or hashish, as is normally found in overdose cases. Furthermore, not one of the prescription drugs was at a toxic level. But Elvis Presley's heart was 50% bigger than normal, causing heart problems and his subsequent death. Nevertheless, because all of those drugs were found, it shifted the attention away from Francisco to Dr. George, aka Dr. Nick, Nicopolis. Presley's fans were demanding to know whether their idol had been hooked on drugs by an unscrupulous physician. Because of the uproar, an official investigation of Nicopolis was begun, and the facts that investigation uncovered were startling. They dismayed Presley's idolaters everywhere. The figures were staggering, incredible to laymen and doctors alike. In the 7 months before Elvis died, Necropolis had prescribed 5,300 odd stimulants, depressants, and painkillers for Presley to take. With this new evidence staring him in the face, Dr. Francisco was forced to call another press conference almost 2 years after Elvis had died. At this time, he told the press, "I am not involved and never have been involved in a cover-up." And then he made good use of the panel he has assembled at the suggestion of Noguchi. He said that 3 pathologists and 1 toxicologist from the University of Tennessee, as well as 2 other toxicologists from other areas, had agreed. There is no evidence the medication present in the body of Elvis Presley caused or made any significant contribution to his death. And I don't know if you know this or not, Adrian, or anybody else who may be listening. Elvis used to have like a candy bowl on his table that was just full of pills. So you just go by and like grab a handful. And that's what his whole crew, basically not lived on or thrived on, but used at their discretion, if you can call it that. And by this time, the American public was very confused over the conflicting stories. From urban slums to Beverly Hills, drug overdoses have become so common since the early 1970s, and yet suspicion lingered about Presley's death. That question, to a great extent, was answered on ABC TV's 2020 program in September 1979. The news programs televised a story on the investigation of Nicopolis. A highly respected pathologist, Dr. Cyril Wetch, vividly explained that prescription drugs at non-toxic levels still can kill. Your organs can only handle so much. Elvis Presley, he said, was a walking pharmacy. According to Dr. Wecht, his death was caused by a condition pathologists call polypharmacy. In this condition, it is not the individual drugs that kill, but their reaction with each other to form a fatal combination. The combined effects of 8 different drugs in Presley's body at the time of death was to depress first the brain and then the heart and lungs, explained Wett. However, he believed Presley's death was accidental, with the patient not realizing what the effect would be. Obviously, Elvis's prized reading material, the physician's desk reference, did not point this out. As the old saying goes, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. But lack of all necessary information might have caused Elvis to create his own coffin within his body by not realizing the danger of interaction of one drug with another. But surely Nicopolis knew about it. Shouldn't he have told Presley? Or did he and Presley ignore the warning? At the hearing before the State Board of Medical Examiners in 1980, Nicopolis convinced the board that Presley was a psychological addict who had been treated in hospitals twice for detox purposes from Demerol and other drugs. Then he went on to give insight into Presley's life on the road. Nicopolis admitted that he always went along carrying not one, as Stanley had said, but 3 suitcases filled with drugs for Presley and his retinue? I don't even know what that word means. The week before a concert was scheduled, Nicopolis would prescribe a program of strong doses of amphetamines, depressants, and painkillers. Presley, who was to start a tour the day after his death, had died during one of those protocols, involving the staggering total of 680 pills and 20 cubic centimeters of liquid downers. What the hell? Uppers and painkillers. Holy shnikes. Dr. Nicopolis also presented persuasive evidence, at least to a jury of his peers, that he had sought to control Presley's drug habits, but admitted that he could not prevent his patient from gobbling drugs from the time he woke up in the morning until he fell asleep at night. The Board of Medical Examiners declared Nicopolis innocent, but one might ask, where was Colonel Parker? He was hiding in the closet. Just kidding. He was behind the couch the whole time. Hooey. Did he not know that his boy was gobbling all these drugs and that they would eventually kill him? Throughout his career, Elvis Presley never at any stage hinted that his relationship with Parker was anything other than congenial and lucrative. He was actually pretty pissed off on how the Colonel handled things. On Presley's death, however, a different story began to emerge, which leaves Presley's sudden death even more mysterious. Many questions were raised in probate court that didn't seem to receive satisfactory answers from those in charge of the king's fortune. Was it even a fortune? Because of Parker's slipshod, on-purpose management practices, and in spite of the fact that Elvis Presley was reckoned to have earned over $1 billion during his career, his estate was rumored to be worth a paltry $1 to $4 million. Elvis left all his money to Lisa Marie, who will inherit the entire principal when she is 30 years old. That's pretty old. Generally it's 20. But I guess for safety issues, I don't know. Wow. 30 years old. Could you imagine waiting that long for your inheritance? Okay, where'd I go? The executors of the will were her mother Priscilla and, of all people, the carney Andreas Van Kuich, alias Colonel Tom Parker, as well as Vernon Presley. Attorney Blanchard E. Toole was appointed by the Memphis Probate Court to protect Lisa Marie's interests. As Toole started his investigation into Presley's business affairs, he began to ask a lot of embarrassing questions about the dubious colonel. According to Toole, Parker had seldom acted in the best interests of his client and also displayed, accidentally on purpose, one might ask, an amazing lack of business acumen. For example, he had never registered Elvis with the British Performing Society, where his music and records sold in the millions, nor did he register Presley with the Broadcast Music, Inc., or ASCAP. As a result, Presley lost out on an additional fortune, which would still be paying out a great deal of money from the performing rights of songs which he had composed. Songs such as Love Me Tender and Don't Be Cruel. I remember, I think I was like 12 or 13 when I asked to have a poster of Elvis and some tapes back in the day of tapes, cassette tapes. He was like my first crush, even though he was dead. I really loved the guy. Toole was appointed to protect Lisa Marie after the executors of the will had asked the probate court to hand over half the estate's annual income to Parker. They claimed, but correctly so, that was the commission Parker had extracted while Presley was alive. Why they made this request has never been uncovered. And even after Elvis's death, all the different paraphernalia and stuff that he used to sell, he made tons of money. Toole filed a report in December 1980 which said that Parker's commissions on Presley's earnings had been excessive, even by the standards of the traditional steep cuts taken in the music industry by managers and promoters who leech off of talent. As an example, Toole cited a deal Parker had struck with RCA in 1973, which did not favor Presley. He negotiated a flat royalty rate of 50 cents per record regardless of price, half of that given to other star performers. Holy crap! I would have fired that guy long before he did. Wow, I just disappeared. That was scary. Parker also arranged for RCA to buy Presley's master tapes at the absurdly low price of $5 million. There's an asterisk there. When you consider that these were priceless, timeless, and represented over 700 songs which had been on the charts. A merchandising deal also cut by Parker split the income 40% in Parker's favor and only 15% in Presley's. Another deal that Toole cited as not being in Presley's best interest was when Parker signed for the singer to appear in Las Vegas in 1972. And that's what I'm talking about with his gambling addiction and stuff. He totally sold him out for way too cheap. And he got free gambling and everything for the longest time. It came out that Elvis's low performance fee compared to other superstars was compensation for free food and drink for Parker, as well as a suite of rooms year-round. It was also revealed that Parker had gambled an incredible $1 million in 1 year at the hotel. I'm telling you, Adrian, it's ridiculous. At this stage, one might ask, where was his father, Vernon, and all the sycophants in Elvis's payroll? Surely they knew the type of side deals Parker was making for himself. Didn't Elvis care, or was he too zonked out? That's why I don't think Parker cared about his drug use. Right? Yeah, that'd especially be a good deal to have free gambling, if you actually won, but like I said, he lost $1 million in 1 year. At this stage, okay, so we already read that. Record royalties were split 50-50, and it was later discovered that Parker did not ask for the audit clause. Toole had to surmise that the former Carney con man did not know how to maximize the money which was pouring in, and that far too large a sum went into taxes. which could have been minimized by a better financial brain, something Parker never sought out. It was also said in court that Parker had received expensive gifts from record companies when making deals. In August of 1981, a little less than a year after he was appointed conservator of Lisa Marie's inheritance, Toole presented his case to the Memphis court. He proved that Lisa Marie's interests would be neglected if Parker were allowed to take 50% from the estate's earnings, and also that Parker should be forced to repay the estate earnings, which he had built up since Presley's death. A considerable amount, Toole told the court. It was also revealed that for the first 11 years of their association, Parker received 25% of Presley's earnings. But in 1967, 10 years before he died, he and Elvis agreed on a 50-50 split. There was no written agreement to prove it. It was also revealed that in the 21 years since they had brokered and worked together, they had never once had dinner together. Well, that's odd. You wouldn't have dinner with your boy. At Presley's funeral, Parker showed up in a gaudy Hawaiian shirt and a baseball cap. The probate judge had no choice but to rule that Parker's compensation was excessive and ordered the executors to stop dealing with him and to start litigation within 45 days to recover money owed to them. RCA, in lieu of a contractual clause to the contrary, refused to allow the estate to audit their books for the period 1973 to Elvis's death in 1977. They claimed that Parker, acting on behalf of his client, agreed with their accounting. It also came out during the hearings that Parker had other side agreements with RCA, quite separate from Presley, but which obviously emanated from Parker's association with Presley and paid him over $400,000. To add to the already burgeoning scandal, it was revealed that the estate was owed $500,000 by a Parker-owned company, Boxcar Enterprises, $6.7 million from RCA Records, nearly $3 million from Britain's Chapel Music, $1.25 million from the film rights and percentages, and $1.35 million from TV residual payments from his special broadcasts. The IRS, who got into the act, ascertained that Parker had not given Presley a fair amount of revenue from his many and varied sources of income. It was also ascertained that Parker could not prove that he had paid his client any income from royalties at all for the last 4 years of his life, the years of Elvis's heaviest drug use. Did Parker realize, or was he told, that Elvis would be worth more dead than alive with his ongoing record sales and accruing royalties, and therefore did not care about Elvis's drug use? Such financial gain for the estate, once Parker was paid off, has certainly been the case. Graceland has been a tourist bonanza with thousands of people admitted to the grounds every month at varying fees. Elvis memorabilia is a major industry in and around Memphis. The additional sale of Elvis records, tapes, videocassettes of his movies, and now CDs have increased the Presley estate tenfold since his death. Thanks to the astute management of Priscilla Presley, in order to preserve the estate of Elvis for their daughter, Lisa Marie, she became involved in managing Elvis's estate. There are still many questions about the unsolved mystery of Elvis Presley's death at the age of 42. Why did none of his so-called bodyguards bother to check on Elvis before Ginger Aldine said she went into his bedroom? Why did so many people around the country keep insisting they see Elvis Presley? Is it because diehard fans still refuse to believe the king is dead? Why and how did Parker keep such a tight rein on Elvis throughout his career? Why did he hold Elvis back from singing and recording some of the songs he wanted to instead of those Parker selected for him? Why did Parker not step in and prevent Elvis's excessive drug use? He must have been aware of it. Why did Nicopolis not warn Presley or counsel him on the polypharmacy possibility or probability? As a physician, Nicopolis must have been aware of the potential of this occurring. The question, as far as research shows, was never raised at the board hearing. The most compelling research on the mysteries and contradictions surrounding Elvis's death was done by Gail Brewer Giorgio. In her new book, The Elvis Files, Was His Death Faked? Sapolsky Publishers, 1990. Brewer Giorgio's early book, Is Elvis Alive?, sold more than 1 million copies and rose to the top of the national bestseller list, demonstrating the strong interest people still have in the unsolved mystery of Elvis's death. And then Stephen B. Eubaney also wrote a book about who killed Elvis Presley, because the way he was found, like, he didn't just fall off the toilet. He was a distance from it, and the way he was laying, and the different bruising and stuff. Yeah, Elvis Presley was amazing. Your grandma had good taste. The Elvis Files raises some interesting points about his death that are worth noting. And it was also like mysterious, like different people that showed up that day that he died, as well as who fled Graceland when he died. It was pretty interesting and pretty shady. Why is much of the official documentation missing from government files, such as all photos taken at the death scene, all the notes made in the medical examiner's investigation, all the toxicology reports allegedly prepared? Why is Elvis's weight listed on the coroner's report as only 170 pounds when he really weighed 250? What was the nature of Elvis's secret role as an undercover agent for the DEA under then-President Richard Nixon? Don't forget, he is not a crook. Why was Elvis fearful of certain organized crime figures? Why has no one ever filed a claim for his multi-million-dollar life insurance policy? That is weird. Why have expert graphologists been able to conclusively verify that Elvis forged his own death certificate? These questions at this late date, and perhaps others, will never be answered. The Elvis legend that was born that day at the Sun Recording Studios will never happen again. But the legend of Elvis Presley will always remain, and so will the questions about his unnecessary death, which could have been prevented if those around him had paid more attention to his well-being. Elvis Presley still exists today in the memories of millions of fans worldwide. Elvis is not driving a taxi in New York, playing the role of a beach bum in Hawaii, fishing in Ireland, or trapping the woods of the Northwest, unfortunately. Yeah, go for it, Adrian. If you get it, kick me a little something, would ya? Since, I'm the reason you figured that out. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, is probably dead. Well over a decade later, his death can be considered one of the greatest of all unsolved mysteries. So here's a picture of Mr. Elvis Aaron Presley arriving home from his stint as a draftee in the U.S. Army. Did you know he had to go to the Army because he got in so much trouble? But here's that picture. Look at that hunka. Death by indigestion, or a bullet to the head? Tom Ince on the set of one of his films, Year Unknown. Here's that picture. So this is the next chapter we'll be going to after this music break. Oh, Marion Davies in the studio portrait, Marvin Page's mock pick and TV research. Do you know who that is? Marion Davies? She was obviously an actress back in the day. But on this music break, we have Mr. Jeff Hilliard. Let me check out our list here. And he'll be singing Abandoned, Consensual Sex Fan, Fingerbanger Day, Silicone Wave, And then we have Cockroach from the UK with We Play House. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
With the Just get in the van. When your life is a never-ending train wreck, and you feel like you're drowning in a sea of regret, with a bit of oppression pressing down on your neck, it hurts so bad. When your overwhelming hatred kills your heart's desire, and reality starts looking like a dumpster fire, you start bitching to me, but you're preaching to the choir. You don't need to be so mad. 'Cause sometimes we hurt, sometimes we cry, sometimes we're sure there's no reason to try. When the whole world goes completely insane, open your heart, stand up and sing. I'm gonna finger bang my day. Yeah, yeah, I'll finger bang my day. That's right. You gotta make the choice to give it all you've got, and make your day long with pleasure, really make it hot. Because your day deserves a lover that pulls out the stops. Come on, it's not so hard. 'Cause sometimes we hurt, sometimes we cry, sometimes we're sure there's no reason to try. When the whole world blows up in our face, what else could we do but stand up and sing? I'm gonna finger bang my day. Yeah, yeah, finger bang my day. Hey, what are we really doing? We can't live in a world that has this much hate. We have to get honest with ourselves. We have to take stock in what our part is in all of this madness. We have to let go, and we focus on giving love, setting that intention. And each and every single one of us gets up every day with the intention to give love. And we do it. We go out there and we give love every single day. Each one of us gets out there and makes love to our day, giving our day a multiple orgasm. The whole world will be orgasmic for the rest of eternity. Sometimes we hurt, sometimes we cry, sometimes we're sure there's no reason to try. When the whole world is fucking insane, we open our hearts, stand up and sing. I'm gonna finger bang my day. Finger bang my day. Finger bang my day. Let's open our hearts, stand up and sing. I'm gonna finger bang my day. Yeah, yeah. Finger bang my day.
I just got a package, I can't wait to get home. I spent all day tracking the shipment on my phone, all that she was lacking. I ordered custom, I can't wait to get some. Take it to the bedroom, she's always nagging. Now I got the air, I send this bitch is packing, going my way. I have a new attraction, don't care what you say, it's better in every way. Now baby, it's time to play, we're gonna make us a tape and show everyone the way. 'Cause I'm going my way, riding up the Silicon Way. I'm on the scene, I'm on the game, with my new real phone, I'm gonna play. Just second way to my Silicon Way. She again, 'cause I'm going my way, riding up Silicon Way. I'll see on the game with my new real dog. I'm gonna play just second way to my Silicon Way. She is here to stay. She's my new real dog, and it's time to play. With my new real dog, I'm gonna play. She's my new real dog, and it's time to play.
The woman of my dreams.
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
Fais-moi l'amour.
Je suis amoureux.
Je pense toujours à
Enchanté,
tu es charmant.
ma chérie. Mon fruité dans une hostie. Ils étaient le nipple.
Tu es chaud. Fais-moi
It's like living on a super yacht, making love to a robot. It's like owning a football team, but having sex with a robot. It's like winning an Oscar and Emmy or Grammy when you're fucking a robot. It's like saving a family with a newborn from a fire, but you're fucking a robot. I'm going my way, riding up Silicon Way. I'll see on the game with my new real dog. I'm gonna play just second way to my Silicon Way. She is here to stay. She's my new real dog, and it's time to play.
We played house. We played house. We played house. We played house.
This was the year 1924, days of the Roaring Twenties in America, the time of prohibition, of bootleggers, of peace and plenty, of early films and film stars: Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, William S. Hart, Harold Lloyd, Mary Miles Minter, Buster Keaton, Ramon Navarro, Rudolph Valentino, Paula Negri, and other famous idols of the silent screen. It was the golden day of the moguls, producers, and directors, just gaining a toehold in Tinseltown, Never Never Land, Oz, Hollywood Boulevard, the yellow brick road to riches. D.W. Griffith, Thomas Ince, Cecil B. DeMille, Samuel Goldwyn, Jesse Lasky, Louis B. Mayer, Jack Warner, Samuel Goldwyn, Joseph Schenck, and Adolf Zucker. It was the halcyon days of William Randolph Hearst, the greatest newspaper baron ever spawned in America, possibly the world. His newspapers not only reported on world events, Hearst attempted to create them. Sometimes he succeeded, thus creating circulation, building headlines for the Hearst newspaper and international news reviews. Only one Bulldog edition of the Los Angeles Times bore the headline: "Producer shot on Hearst yacht." By contrast, Hearst's Los Angeles Examiner carried a little different banner, led the next morning. Special car rushes stricken Ince home from ranch. The editors and publishers of the Los Angeles Times killed the yacht story in all further editions. Over the years, employees of the venerable newspaper searched the archives for that edition. Even though the Times regularly published an early midnight edition, all other issues for the week of November 16, 1924 were accounted for, but not that edition for November 17th, the day of the headline. This was an example of the far-reaching power of William Randolph Hearst during that era. Even though the Times was a Hearst competitor, and in itself generated a great deal of power in the community, it agreed to kill the story because of the lack of evidence and corroboration. At least that is the story as told by the old-timers on the paper. When the word came down from the publisher's suite to kill the Ince story, we were once told by an old-time staffer assigned to the arts pages. Everyone guessed something was going on somewhere in Never Never Land, and that a massive gigantic cover-up was starting to form. Many said word was telephoned from the San Diego area by a Hearst secretary to various editors of Hearst's Los Angeles Examiner and to the publisher's suite of the Times. In the 1920s, William Randolph Hearst was America's most powerful and feared man. In his heyday, he was so feared that not even rival tabloids or broadsheets would risk open warfare with WR. It was just not worth the gamble. Hearst's alleged fortune of $400 million from silver mines was so colossal in those days that he could buy anyone or anything he wanted. Word spread throughout the city rooms of the nation's newspapers and editors' offices and publishers' suites that many newsmen, some editors, and even some publishers had been forever barred from further employment in the profession. They had displeased W.R. Hearst's extramarital relationship with actress Marion Davies. Was that the lady up here? Oh, it was. So this gal, he had an affair with her. Was already notorious, but at no time were their names linked publicly in the nation's press, particularly in Los Angeles and Hollywood. There was no National Enquirer or Star in those days to expose the foibles of man. Go back over here. Hello, beautiful Sister Sandra. Even several heretofore fearless yellow sheets, the tabloids of their day, and usually engaged in dog-eat-dog circulation wars, decided to pass on the coupling. In the 1920s, William Randolph Hearst had such a strong impact on corporate America that no one hoping for power and acceptance dared to make him cross. Besides being a newspaper tycoon, William Randolph Hearst was a giant among film financiers. The beacon of... Hold on. Where'd I go? The beacon of American publishers had entered the movie industry in 1911 via the newsreels. At first it was a hobby, but when newsreels became a popular feature at the local theaters, the profits began to roll in. The amateur film interest then turned into a zealous professional one, as a means of furthering the film career of Marion Davies. The power of Hearst Press, the Hearst magazines, most still in existence today, the Hearst radio stations, and the Hearst syndicated columns assured Tycoon an obeisance from the sycophants of the burgeoning movie colony. Hearst leapt into feature films when he purchased several thousand shares of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, which released the Hearst Movietone News, later Fox Movietone, using his stock as clout. So, from left to right, we have Douglas Fairbanks, married Pickford, Chaplin, and early movie pioneer D.W. Griffith. And then at the bottom of this page, a New Year's party at San Simeon, left to right, Irene Dunne, who passed away in 1990, Hearst, Betty Davis, Luella Parsons, never far from her meal ticket, and an unknown starlet. So there's those. And then we have D.W. Griffith, one of the earliest film pioneers and friend of Thomas Eames. He said several years following Tom Eames's death that if the producer's name was ever mentioned around William Randolph Hearst, he turned white as a ghost, and whoever mentioned it would be banned from San Simeon, the Santa Monica House, or the Yacht for Life, and probably his or her career would be on the line as well. And then Charlie Chaplin and The Gold Rush, one of his most famous comedies. I love black and white pictures. They're pretty cool. Can you hear me? Let me make sure this thing is working. Hello, hello, hello. Yep, it's working. Good. So using his stock as clout, he organized Cosmopolitan Pictures to produce films exclusively with Davies. He first made several deals with MGM, then with Warner Brothers, First National for distribution. Hearst told intimates that nothing was going to stop him from making Marion Davies one of the world's best-known film stars. Hearst never took into account the fact that Davies had no depth of acting ability. But she was pretty. For someone with a modicum of ability, Davies had come very far. Her beach house on Pacific Coast Highway in Santa Monica, built for her by Hearst, was a block long, 3 stories high, and had 3 marble swimming pools. Like, how many pools do you need, and how many stories do you need as a single woman? The Pacific Ocean was 150 yards away across the sandy beach. The green and white mansion became the meeting place for Hollywood's elite. It was here she gained artistic respectability. Accepting Davies as an acting talent came with a bigger bonus: an entry into Hearst's personal circle. Friends and admirers of Davies were known to occasionally receive an invitation to Hearst's vast domain at San Simeon, now a California state park. This lavish estate was filled with millions of dollars worth of imported furnishings, tapestries, and paintings. The garage housed 35 cars. Holy shnikes! There were numerous guest houses, which each came with many rooms, as Hearst would not allow non-married couples to share the same bedroom, not even himself and Marion. Regardless, San Simeon was an extraordinary way to spend a holiday. and a visit to the estate was a must-have invitation for the 1920s elite. Over all this splendor, Marion Davies reigned as star and mistress. Invitations to galas thrown by Hearst were coveted items, as the millionaire media mogul was known for his wild star-studded parties that ignored the era's prohibition of alcohol. These extravaganzas took place in a variety of locales, some at San Simeon, others at Marion Davies' beach house or on Hearst's prestigious yacht, the Oneida. Often they were fun festivals of wild abandon, but when the cream of Hollywood elite circle received an invitation from the newspaper baron for a 3-day cruise commencing the 15th of November 1924, Hearst had other motives. The invitation stated that the trip was to celebrate the 43rd birthday of Thomas Harper Eames, one of the true pioneers of Hollywood filmmaking, the innovator of the They Went That-A-Way westerns. 15 socialites were scheduled to be on board the Oneida for the festivities, including Eames and his wife, Nell, Eames's business manager, George H. Thomas, and his mistress, Charlie Chaplin, Margaret Livingston, British writer Eleanor Glynn, actress Eileen Pringle, Sina Owen, Juliana Johnson, Dr. Daniel Carson Goodman, production head of Hart's Cosmopolitan Pictures, named after his successful magazine of the same name, Hearst's chief secretary, Joseph Willicombe, Los Angeles Herald publisher Frank Barham, and his wife. Also included were Marion Davies, her sisters, Ethel and Renee, and her niece, Peppy. In all pretense, it seemed like a glorious weekend of pleasure, but Hearst was a calculating man who had more in mind than just the indulgence of a few favored friends. In fact, he had 2 ulterior motives in mind when he planned this voyage. First, Hearst was trying to lure noted producer Tom Eames into working with Cosmopolitan Pictures. His goal was to create a movie empire to match that of the already entrenched moguls, and Eames, who had a noteworthy reputation, was part of this plan. Although Eames was renowned for his westerns, the Which Way Did He Go shoot 'em ups were beginning to lose popularity among the masses. Romantic love stories had now come into vogue. This suited 27-year-old Davies' very limited acting ability, as her strength lay in fluttering her eyelids. How romantic. Eames, on the other hand, had yet to find his niche in the changing movie market, so he was interested in the ideas of the omnipotent Hearst had to offer. The logical move was for Hearst to take over the Eames Studios in Culver City, where Gone with the Wind would eventually be filmed. A proposition over which he and Eames had already begun negotiations. This was the reason Eames's business manager, George Thomas, and Hearst's production chief, Dr. Goodman, were invited aboard the Oneida. Hearst had hoped to wrap up the deal before the yacht returned to San Pedro Harbor Monday evening. There was a second and more compelling reason for Hearst to have invited Eames, as well as Charlie Chaplin. Hearst wanted to ascertain which of the 2 men were sleeping with his mistress, Marion. He had heard rumors that, while he was off on his various business trips, she had been trysting with Charlie Chaplin, and possibly Eames. Hearst had gotten this information from a squad of gumshoes he employed to keep him informed of Davies' dalliances during his many absences on business. Heretofore, Chaplin had a penchant for deflowering Vestal virgins. A virgin Davies was not. It was out of character for Chaplin to make Marion Davies, especially as he was about to marry Leda Gray. But an impending marriage never stopped Chaplin before, and the silent screen star was intrigued by Davies' stutter. Good thing it was a silent film, if you have a stutter. William Randolph Hearst was uncommonly jealous of other men's attentions to Marion Davies. When he received reports that Davies was intimately involved with one of the great studs of early Hollywood, Charlie Chaplin, he was fuming. Chaplin was invited to attend the party on the yacht so that Hearst could observe his deportment around Davies during the long weekend. Charlie, his friends later said, had some qualms about going along on the cruise, but decided to throw caution to the winds even though he might incur Hearst's wrath if he so much as spoke to Davies. On this voyage, Hearst was to find out the truth, and with tragic results which ended up as one of the greatest cover-ups in Hollywood history. In the early morning hours of Saturday, November 15th, 1924, Hearst and Thomas Eames went horseback riding on the bridle trail that ran through Beverly Hills and down the middle of Sunset Boulevard. No one knows exactly what the two men talked about during that post-dawn ride. Whether they spoke of their possible business merger, whether they had an argument, or just talked about the events of the day, has never been revealed. The only thing that has been established was that Eames told Hearst that he had to attend the preview of his latest films, The Mirage, that evening, after which he would take the last train to San Diego in order to board the yacht early Sunday morning to celebrate his birthday in fine style. It had the potential for a glorious weekend. The weather was balmy and spirits were high in that fateful Saturday. Marion Davies was collected on the set of a film called Nander the Great by two other yachting guests, Charlie Chaplin and a Hearst rider, Luella Parsons. They were all chauffeured to San Pedro Marina by Chaplin's personal servant, Cono. This was Luella O. Parsons' first visit to Los Angeles, but the City of Angels was to become her home after the start of her infamous career. Lolly, as she was known to her friends, along with Haida Hopper, was one of the piranhas of Hollywood gossip from late 1924 until her retirement 50 years later. Luella Parsons always denied that she had been on the cruise that weekend. Unfortunately, those denials never rang true because several people saw her leave the studio that morning with Chaplin, Davies, and Cano in the comedian's huge Packard touring car. Nevertheless, Parsons was given the job as motion picture editor of Hearst Newspapers, an international news service, just after that fated weekend. It was a prestigious and lucrative position. Lolly's income reached a peak of $16,000 during the late 30s, a far cry from the $50 a week salary she received for writing a daily column for Hearst's New York American. The power that Lolly Parson wielded from that weekend forward was unbridled. It was hell for the stars who married without calling Lolly first, or who became pregnant without telling her how they consummated the act. Heaven forbid if a starlet had a baby between her deadlines. Such a snubbing would forever banish them from the pages of the Hearst newspapers, unless she was passing along negative information. As part of the cover-up for that weekend, and to kill any idea that Parsons had been on the yachting guest list, Hearst ordered Wilcombe, his secretary, to instruct editors to dateline all Parsons' columns for that week. New York, in an attempt to disprove that she had been on board. From the decisive day forward, Luella O. Parsons, with an unswerving career goal to become the most powerful motion picture writer and columnist in Hollywood, saw her dream come true by being in the right place at the right time. Parsons' unswerving loyalty to W.R. for giving her an opportunity remained intact. She single-handedly, among the Hollywood press corps, lauded the talent of Marion Davies, and she took the secret of the cruise to her grave. William Randolph Hearst's 280-foot yacht, the Oneida, set sail for Los Angeles, bound for San Diego, with his star-spangled passenger list on board. As the yacht steamed out of San Pedro Harbor, Hearst and his hostess-cum-mistress, Marion Davies, entertained their guests with live jazz music and the finest vintage champagne. I don't know about you, but that shit gives me a headache. In the days of Prohibition, the act of serving alcohol constituted a felony. As he had told Hearst earlier that morning, Thomas Ince did not board with the other guests in San Pedro. Instead, he boarded the yacht Sunday morning in San Diego. His wife remained in Los Angeles, claiming she didn't feel well. When Ince joined the contingent of merrymakers, he appeared to be in perfect health. What happened from the moment he boarded until his sudden death a few days later continues to be one of the most bizarre murder mysteries in the annals of Hollywood scandals. From bits and pieces of conversations put together over the years, a possible scenario for tragedy unfolded on that Sunday night. Late afternoon, during the Sunday celebrations, Hearst noticed that Davies and Chaplin were not in Le Grand Salon of the yacht where the guests had been summoned by the publisher for cocktails prior to dinner. He went on to search for them, fearing the worst. As passed down by eyewitness Kono, who was always hovering near Chaplin in case his master needed him, Hearst spotted Chaplin and Davies leaning against the rail. Chaplin's massive manhood about to navigate the love canal of Marion Davies, obviously with her consent. Hearst swore at the pair as he ran along the upper deck, shouting at the two stars. The shouting attracted other guests, including Ince, who ran downstairs and attempted to shield the pair from Hearst's view. Enraged, Hearst yelled down from above that he would kill both of them. He then ran for his pearl-handled revolver. So here's a picture. Oh, Charlie Chaplin, you were so cute. Hey, UFO Bigfoot. Oh no, well I hope your toothache gets better. Toothaches are not to be trifled with. That's serious business. So here is Charlie Chaplin in Hollywood circa 1920s. Chaplin as the Tramp. And then here's Marion Davies strolling at MGM Studios with famed playwright George Bernard Shaw. And then Marion Davies in a studio portrait. Look at Chaplin without his mustache. I can't even tell that's him. What a handsome man. And then there he is as the Tramp. And there's Marion Davies and all you can see. Hearst had always prided himself on his marksmanship, sometimes knocking off a seagull with a hip shot from his favorite pistol. Yeah, as far as your tooth goes, UFO Bigfoot, be careful with that. A friend of mine didn't go to the dentist and he actually pulled his own tooth and he ended up dying. So make sure you get that taken care of correctly and be very careful. Before we continue on this says, Chaplin, upon receiving his honorary Oscar in 1971, amidst great controversy over his left-wing leanings. One columnist wrote of the episode, I'm old enough to remember how he sat out World War II, helping neither his adopted country, this one, which had made him rich, nor his native one, England, which was fighting for its life. Too old, I suppose, to have been drafted or enlisted. He didn't follow Joe E. Brown's example and do camp shows and benefits, nor did he do anything else including pay his taxes. Because of the ambivalence toward him by particularly everyone but the oligarchy, he had to make his entrance through the underground garage. So, here's a picture of Chaplin when he was older. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. From the upper deck, Ince and Chaplin looked alike, especially in the dim light on the lower deck and with their backs to Hearst. In the ensuing confusion, Ince, not Chaplin, dropped with a bullet to the head from the hand of marksman William Randolph Hearst, and her famous stutter Davis was heard to yell, Unknown to Hearst, the Japanese servant witnessed the entire confrontation, including the shot which would be fatal to Tom Ince, not Charlie Chaplin as intended. Kano retired to the servants' quarters, not wishing to be seen by Hearst or by anyone else. He was frightened for his own life, given the wrath of W.R. at the particular moment. This story was passed down to Kano's relatives over the years and to other Japanese domestics in Beverly Hills with whom he associated. Once they boarded the yacht in San Pedro and joined the other guests, the yacht sailed straight into the controversy, which has not waned to this day. What happened to Thomas Harper Eames on the cruise? W.R. had his secretary, Wilcombe, put out a story to the Hearst editors which was an absurd piece of garbage. Eames, with his wife Nell and his 2 young sons, had been visiting the Hearst Ranch in upstate California for several days prior to the acute attack of indigestion. Indigestion in the head. Jeez, oh Pete. When the illness came upon him suddenly, Eames was stricken unconscious. He was then removed to a private railroad car with 2 doctors and 2 nurses and sent home to Beverly Hills to recuperate. Unfortunately for Hearst, witnesses had seen Thomas Eames aboard the Oneida at San Diego, but even more regrettable for Hearst and responsible for allowing the truth to leak out over the years, Charlie Chaplin's secretary, an obsequious little Japanese man who answered to Kano. So something he shouldn't have seen. He later related his experiences to other domestics over the years, with the story in turn being related to the employers of the domestics, including the author's family. In the aftermath of Tom Eames's death, a series of strange events gave every appearance of foul play on the yacht. Many observers, because of the demeanor of the crew and tight-lipped guests, deduced it involved Hearst himself. In the aftermath of Tom Eames's death, a series of strange events gave every appearance of foul play on the yacht. Many observers, because of the demeanor of the crew and tight-lipped guests, deduced it involved Hearst himself. The Oneida's captain had the entire crew sworn to secrecy, in fear of losing their jobs. Hearst slipped away to New York in his private railroad car, which he had ordered to San Diego, but left Davies behind because she was in the middle of filming a new Cosmopolitan production. The note he left her is said to have contained the words, "I think it is best to go east since the situation in California is so unsatisfactory." Hearst, it was said, had an aversion to funerals. The oath of secrecy also added fuel to the fire that something definitely untoward happened on the cruise. Why did all the guests refuse to talk to the press or anyone else as to what happened that fateful weekend? Motion picture people of that era were usually very quick to talk to the press. One of the guests, the novelist, screenwriter, and social entrepreneur, Eleanor Glynn, was very outspoken about other Hollywood scandals in her biography. She failed, as mentioned in an early footnote, to say anything about this one, even though she was a guest on the cruise. Similarly, Charlie Chaplin appeared to have a total lapse of memory in his autobiography, Chaplin Many Years Later. Chaplin claims he was not present on the cruise in his 500-page tome. Instead, he wrote, he visited Tom Eames on his sickbed 2 weeks before his death, from a heart attack he suffered while on that cruise. Strange, but 2 weeks before his death? What? Tom Eames was shooting a film in Culver City and appeared to be perfectly healthy when he walked on board the Oneida at San Diego that fateful Sunday morning. It is amazing how widespread amnesia is in Hollywood when it comes to these affairs. The power of William Randolph Hearst reached out even from the grave to silence those who could tarnish the old goat's memory. Rumors were rife in and around San Diego, where Oneida had docked to bring Eames ashore and into a waiting ambulance. The story put out by Wilcombe preceded the disembarkation of Eames from the yacht. Bystanders, police, and others were told that Eames was suffering from a bad attack of indigestion and heart problems, which made him bleed from the head. In Hollywood, few knew anything about the Hearst yachting trip. Little by little, information leaked out, aided and abetted by Kano and his friends, all anxious to hear what had happened. But in San Diego, the rumors flew so fast that the district attorney, Chester Kimpley, was forced into calling an investigation. At the hearing, the principals were strangely absent and had not been subpoenaed, and Hearst could not be reached by anyone. However, Kimpley did not call Sina Owen, Marion Davis, or Eleanor Glenn, known for certain to have been on board. Dr. Daniel Carson Goodman, the Hearst employee, did appear, and his was the only official story of what was supposed to have transpired that Sunday on the Hearst yacht. The story told by Goodman was released by the DA was, on Saturday, November 15th, I boarded the yacht belonging to International Film Corporation, another Hearst company, with a party on board to San Diego. Mr. Eanes was to have been one of the party. He was unable to leave Saturday, stating that he had to attend a preview of his latest film, but would join us in San Diego on Sunday morning. When Mr. Eanes joined us on Sunday morning, he complained of nothing but being tired. I discussed during the day details of his agreement just made with International Film Corporation to produce pictures in combination with each other. Mr. Eanes seemed well, continued Goodman. He ate a hearty dinner and retired early. Next morning, he and I rose early before any of the other guests to return to Los Angeles. Eanes had complained during the night he had an attack of indigestion and still felt bad. On the way to the train station, he complained of a pain in his heart. But at Del Mar, 30 miles north of San Diego, a heart attack came upon him and we got off. At no time during Goodman's dissertation did Kimpley or his aides ever question him about the veracity of his account, or of Eanes being seen removed from the yacht into an ambulance. A writer could not have concocted a better scenario to fit the facts of what Hearst wanted them to put out. Following a brief respite for lunch, Goodman continued, I thought it was best to take him off the train, insist upon him resting in a hotel. I immediately telephoned Mrs. Eanes and told her her husband was not feeling well. I then called in a local physician and remained myself until the afternoon, when I continued on to Los Angeles. Mr. Eanes told me that he had similar attacks before, but they had not amounted to anything. He gave no evidence of having had any liquor of any kind. My knowledge as a physician enabled me to diagnose the case as one of acute indigestion. Goodman never mentioned lead poisoning as a possible diagnosis. But a Dr. Truman Parker, a supposed Del Mar physician who had been summoned by Dr. Goodman, told the district attorney a quite different version that added considerable mystery to the case and gave rise to a great deal of speculation as to what actually had transpired on board and at the hotel. Dr. Parker and Dr. Goodman had obviously got their signals mixed. Parker diagnosed Eanes as having a mild heart attack, recommended rest, and called in a nurse, and said he would return later. But before Parker could return, Nell Eanes had arrived from Los Angeles and left a note for Parker, and the nurse he had summoned that their services were no longer required. Eanes, according to Goodman's story to Kimpley, was taken from the hotel by ambulance to a private railroad car attached to a Los Angeles train. The family was told in Del Mar that his condition was not serious. During all this, Nell Eanes must have known something other than indigestion was ailing her husband. She remained strangely silent following a meeting with Dr. Goodman in Del Mar. In the early hours of Wednesday morning, November 19, 1924, Thomas Harper Eanes died at his Benedict Canyon home. His death was attributed to heart failure. His three sons, William, 15, Thomas H. Jr., 11, and Dick, 9, and Nell Eanes were with him when he passed away. Because of her silence and total reticence to discuss the case, Nell Eanes received a large monetary settlement from Hearst for her silence and cooperation in agreeing to the official her story of her husband's death. Tom Ince did not die a wealthy man, and Nell Ince had 3 sons to raise. She left California almost immediately. Tom Ince's death came as a terrible shock to the then closely knit oligarchy. Production at the Ince studios came to a halt until things could be sorted out. 4 films were shooting, all under the aegis of Ince. The funeral was private, and Ince was cremated almost immediately. Well, that's not fishy at all. This in itself added more to the speculation because Mrs. Ince refused to allow an autopsy and ordered the immediate cremation. Then there was a new and even stranger turn to the mystery. Kimpley, who had first declared that he intended to call every person on board the yacht that fatal Sunday to give their version of what happened, did not call any of them following Goodman's testimony. Suddenly, after that first session, he called off any further inquiry into the sudden illness of Thomas Ince on board the yacht and his subsequent death. Kimpley said he was satisfied that Ince died of a heart attack following acute indigestion. At a press conference, he called to announce his stand. He told the press that I called this investigation because of many rumors brought to my office regarding the case, and have considered them until today in order to definitely dispose of them. There will be no further investigation of stories of drinking aboard the yacht or anything else which has been rumored to have transpired. If there are to be any further hearings, even involving the illegal liquor believed to have been aboard, then the hearings will have to be heard in Los Angeles, where the liquor was undoubtedly obtained. People interested in Mr. Ince's sudden death have continued to come to me with persistent reports that in order to satisfy them, I did conduct an investigation. But, after questioning the doctor privately who allegedly attended Mr. Ince in Del Mar, I am satisfied the death of Thomas Ince was from natural causes. The long arm of William Randolph Hearst had reached out once again, probably through Dr. Daniel Carson Goodman. Following the press conference, C.F. Adelsberger, an editorial writer for what is now Long Beach, California Press Telegram, but then the Long Beach News wrote, "If there is any foundation for suspecting that Thomas Ince's death was from other than natural causes, and there is good reason to believe there is, then an investigation should be made in justice to the public, as well as those concerned in the case." As far as anybody could ascertain, not one reporter covering Hollywood attended Kimpley's press conference. There was yet another strange angle added to the mystery in a statement made by Nell Ince through a spokesperson obviously provided by Hearst, immediately following her husband's funeral. She said she had been invited to accompany her husband on the yacht on Saturday night, but said that she and Ince had attended a preview of The Mirage that evening, and she was not feeling very well. They then agreed her husband should go by train to San Diego and join the yacht there while she rested at home. Very few answers to very serious questions have ever been answered over the years. There should have been a charge of murder, or, at the very least, manslaughter, brought against the shooter of Tom Ince. In this case, according to Cano, William Randolph Hearst, although there was no corroboration or proof, but the facts do seem to confirm that it is highly probable, even though Cano's description was passed down through 2 generations. Many other questions also will never be answered. If Nell Ince was well enough to attend the preview of Ince's film in an outlying suburb, why did she suddenly become too ill to attend the party for her husband? Why did Luella Parsons deny, until her death, that she was on board the yacht that weekend? This in spite of the fact a witness saw her leave the studio with Chaplin and Marion Davies, with Cano at the wheel. Was it also not odd that Ince, if Nell was really ill, would go off alone and leave her and the children behind on his birthday? Why could no trace of Dr. Thomas Parker be found in Del Mar? The doctor, Dr. Goodman, claimed he called in to assist Tom Ince. Were differences brewing between the Eameses over other women, including Marion Davies? How did Hearst and Goodman keep Dr. Thomas Parker quiet about the bullet wounds? Or could Dr. Parker have come from Central Casting, summoned to Del Mar by Dr. Goodman, who was head of Cosmopolitan Productions? As such, he was in a strong position to ask for such favors from an actor. Could it be that Tom Ince was already dead or dying when he was being carried off the yacht in San Diego, and that the Del Mar visit was to allow Goodman time to summon a phony Dr. Parker, and also time to obtain Nell Ince's acquiescence to cover up and protect W.R. Hearst? These questions and the statements of Dr. Goodman at the so-called inquest, called by Kempley, also made the statement issued by Wilkenby that Ince and his family had been visiting the ranch. So much garbage. It was obvious that at the time he issued the statement, a cover-up had not been completely thought out by those involved. Even though no members of the Hollywood press corps attended Kempley's investigation into Ince's death, several statements were made by other members of the press who were present. It was understood, wrote one, that District Attorney Kempley's investigation was to establish what had actually occurred at the party directly preceding the director's death. The probe halted before any members of the party had ever been questioned. It appears that others also had their doubts at the time but never followed through. The Hearst-Davies diarchy rode out the scandal unscathed because of the old man's power in keeping a muzzle on not only his own newspapers but those of his rivals as well. Such was the unbridled power of William Randolph Hearst. But as David Wark Griffith remarked in later years when asked about the Ince death, he replied, "All you have to do to make Hearst turn white as a ghost is mention Ince's name." There's plenty wrong there, but Hearst is just too big to touch. It was also well known and passed around the film colony that any mention of Tom Ince's name within Hearst's hearing would kill any future invitations to the Santa Monica Beach House, the yacht, or San Simeon. A perverse footnote concerning Ince became known to the film colony when Nell placed their Benedict Canyon home on the market, following Ince's death. This was an enormous Spanish-style mansion built by Ince and completed only 6 months before his death. Dias Doradas, Golden Days, and Benedict Canyon, which Ince had designed himself, was a showplace where the Golden People, as he called them, delighted in spending carefree weekends. The Golden People, however, completely ignored or did not know about one feature: a secret gallery above the guest rooms provided with concealed peepholes over the beds. That's creepy. These provided Tom Ince with a bird's-eye view of some of the most expensive asses in Hollywood, grinding their way home into some of the most sought-after vaginas in Tinseltown. Some of Hollywood's most celebrated couples had thus repaid their host's bounty by a gracious demonstration of their boudoir calisthenics. Only Tom Ince had the key to the concealed passageway. The large trust fund Hearst set up for Nell Ince was eventually wiped out by the Depression. This gesture alone, if it had been revealed, would have pointed to Hearst's guilt for Ince's death. After this disaster, Nell Ince ended her days driving a taxi to support herself, aided by her sons. The $550,000 she received for Dias Doradas from producer Carl Laemmle was also wiped out by the stock market crash. Nevertheless, the legend of Tom Ince's mysterious death will always remain one of Hollywood's unsolved mysteries, one that has been puzzled over for decades. We believe we have come up with the answer, the true cause and method of Tom Ince's mysterious death, not by indigestion, but by the ingestion of a bullet to the back of the head. So here's a picture from left to right: Luella O. Parsons, Hearst, and Marion Davis at a costume party at Simeon. The identity of Parsons' doormat is unknown. Parsons became the most powerful columnist in Hollywood for being in the right place at the right time. The cruise on the Hearst yacht, the Oneida, the weekend that Eanes was shot. For whatever reason, Parsons always denied that she was on the cruise, although several people saw her arriving in San Pedro with Charlie Chaplin, Gounod, the latter's servant, and Marion Davies, who was picked up on the set of Xander the Great and driven to San Pedro in Chaplin's touring car and aboard the yacht. So here's that picture. Well, that is the end of story time this evening. In the next hour, we're actually going to watch a video that is going to be very good. So on this music break, we have Mr. Jeff Hilliard with Cock That Hills, Multitude, Good Life. Then we have Cockroach from the UK with ICU. And then we have Miss Mia Savage with her band Antidote for Savages with Lemurian Crypto. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
desperate and pathetic. Nothing but a coward. You're a fool with nothing to offer. No one will ever believe you. They see you for what you are. You're just a fraud, a shell of a person. And now the marvelous fear to penetrate the demons that have you. They carry you to the depths of the hate. I am the son of a...
Open wide, it's the fight for your life. I got Mola moves, got that Mola too. You think it's wrong? Back of the head too long. Fuck that. Check these Mola moves. You need a Mola too. I can do no wrong. Back of the head long, never gonna cut it.
All these hookers sweet on me. Look at them chasing me, showing me that ass. And I bagged up snatch. I do this shit for free. Go down your mama till 3. She's taking selfies with the mullet like it's history. How can I maneuver you with that pussy, dude? You sit like Buddha waiting on it to come to you. My lines are straight to the point. She shows me gratitude. So what's your latitude? Let's adjust your attitude. Head with a alligator, double dually Lamborghini. All up in a silly little yellow polka dot bikini.
I got Mola moves, I got that Mola too. You think it's wrong? Back of the head too long. Fuck that.
Head with a alligator, double dually Lamborghini. All up in a silly little yellow polka dot bikini.
Check these Mola moves. You need a Mola too. I can do no wrong. Back of the head long, never gonna cut it.
Alligator, double dually Lamborghini. All up in a silly little yellow polka dot bikini. You're like the butt of a butter knife cutting up panini. So climb back in your kangaroo pouch like a rolling genie. These moves are hot, these locks I got. This power cannot be disputed and it can't be bought. So you can find me in the studio with all these thoughts. You wanna buy my style, but you can't be what you're not, neighbor.
I got Mola moves, I got that Mola too. You think it's wrong? Back of the head too long. Fuck that. Check these Mola moves. You need a Mola too. I can do no wrong. Back of the head long, never gonna cut it. Got that motherfucking Mola. You wanna touch it?
Yeah. Next time you come around here with your bitch ass, just remember how my mullet makes your hoes pussy drip, drip, drip.
I got Mola moves, I got that Mola too. You think it's wrong? Back of the head too long. Fuck that. Check these Mola moves. You need a Mola too. I can get no wrong. Back of the head long, never gonna cut it. I got Mola moves, I got that Mola too. You think it's wrong? Back of the head too long. Fuck that. Check these Mola moves. You need a Mola too. I can get no wrong. Back of the head long, never gonna cut it. Never gonna cut it. Never gonna cut it.
Drip, drip,
Mola moves. Just a Mola, bitch. Mola moves.
drip, drip.
Mola moves. Never gonna cut it.
Excuse me! Excuse me! You got a cigarette? Hey, you help a guy out with some spare change. Anything will do, man. Oh, God bless you. Can I just get your change? I missed the bus. I got these 6 right there. I'm not an animal! Moving like a steak knife. This is a good life. Dancing in the moonlight. I wanna be inside of you. We got plenty to do till the 1:45. And I know you wanna ride my Cadillac. Don't give me no flack, I'll put you flat on your back. Moving like a steak knife. That's right. This is a good life. Dancing in the moonlight. I'm a sexual phenomenon, and you know I'm a sexual phenomenon, and I know I'm a sexual phenomenon. We all know I'm a sexual phenomenon. Get money, get high. Don't care if I live or die. Get money, get high. Don't care if I live or die.
Welcome to the classic world, the art of Oswald. Dance around with these funky sounds, jumping around in the ocean like you. I'm really cool because I have a train and a drug. No one's looking at you, no one's your guy's not gonna save you. They're hiding behind the moon, watching your every move. This is a good life. This is a good life. This is a good life.
Welcome back, and thanks so much for joining me this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. So glad you're here. So, for the first 2 hours, we did story time. Oh, hold on a second. Let me reset this. It was on auto DJ, so. Alright, that's the outro song that was just trying to play. Sorry about that. So right here, if you could, please vote for me, TessaTNT, for the Face of Horror. So not only do you get a grand prize of like $13,000, but you get a photo shoot in Rue Morgue magazine going head-to-head with Mr. Kane Hodder, a.k.a. Jason Voorhees. I almost said Jesse. Jason Voorhees. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. This is the second year I've done this, and I'm hoping to stay in the running like I did last time for quite a while. So if you could, please go there. faceofhorror.org/2023/Tessa-Thomas-Peterson. That would be amazing. So let me go over here and... So for this hour, we are going to be watching a video together. Let me get my share screen up. And don't worry, I'll take that banner down. In just a moment. Un momento, por favor. So please go there and vote. I'd really appreciate it if you did. So this is top 10 scary videos to creep you to sleep. This is by Fearsome Top 5. So please go over there and subscribe. Oh, yeah. Oh. Or a nightgown.
Becca believes that this is the being responsible for the strange activity in her home. Number 2. As time goes on, UFO sightings seem to be getting more and more common. And just this week,
I got so many pictures and videos.
Ray spotted something bizarre
They're
that
out
he
there.
couldn't explain. As it flew through the night sky over San Antonio, Texas, Amon quickly began recording.
Mom, look at my phone. Look at my phone, and you see it moving. That big ass thing right there is moving.
Okay. We need to take a picture. I'm gonna take a picture.
No,
right
go
now.
on video with them. Go on video with
Right
them.
now. I'm gonna take a picture right now.
It's fading. It's fading.
It's
What the-
fading. Oh my God! It just disappeared.
No, no, it's that little dot.
Look at her face.
And now it's getting
Oh
blurry,
my God.
and now it's doing, and then it just disappeared.
Oh my God, Charles! It went.
I got it all on.
A massive glowing object slowly made its way through the sky, but over time it began to fade before eventually completely disappearing. This unusual object seemed to dematerialize, leaving no trace that it was ever there. Amon and his family were shocked at what they were witnessing before their eyes. And at this point, you can find me on my porch every night, patiently waiting for my turn to...
Okay, so I had an experience like that. So, you know how we have meteor showers every year, and now it seems more and more frequent, but I'm going to say it was about, I don't know, 12 years ago. Went out and I had my camera and I'm taking pictures of the moon because the moon was just like really bright that night, and it was putting off this like electric blue color. And so I'm taking pictures of it, and my eyesight's not the best. I wasn't wearing any glasses or anything. And as I'm going back through my pictures to kind of edit it as I go, because otherwise, like, I have a lot of work to do afterwards, you see all these different spacecraft, and it looked like a little cylinder with two little bobbles on the side, kind of like a peni. But yeah, no matter what form they were in, as far as like facing this way or facing down or facing up or whatnot, they were all doing the same movements, but you can see them tucked around all the little clouds. If you want to see it, you can go over to fourcornersparanormalinvestigations.com or weareparanormalinvestigations.com, and I do need to update that because, like I said, I have videos and other stuff to share on there, but they're all tucked around the clouds and they're in the same formation. It was pretty interesting. But, so they went from that, and the very first picture I got that night, I call it the conference on the clouds, because it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe it was like 6 different UFOs, and it looked like they were on a cloud in a circle. And it was white, blue, red, green, different colors. And then, like I said, they were like just tucked along the clouds and stuff like that. And then later on in the evening, they went back to their orb sort of look. And then as they went away, just like in this video, when the UFO is going away, it's like they go warp drive away from you. So it seems like they're fading out, but they're just like flying somewhere really fast. But that was pretty interesting, and I thought I would just share that with you really quick. But they are out there. I have other UFO stories too, but I won't bother you with that right now. Or will I?
CET. Number 3. Speaking of UFOs, TikTok user High323 can be added to the list of people that have witnessed strange things in the sky.
Hey, Rob!
Late at night, while on a walk outside, it was hard to miss the glowing object floating above. Thinking fast, this TikTok user began recording before this anomaly disappeared altogether.
I saw one of those too! Alright, I'm going to pause the video again, because I saw the exact same thing. Okay. So back in 2012, we went to the motorcycle rally, which that just happened on Labor Day weekend, so this last weekend. And I was there with my kids during the day, but at a certain hour, you have to take your kids out of the rally because, you know, titties start flying and all kinds of different things start happening. And you don't want your kids to see that. So I'm driving my 72 Gran Torino back home, and my 2 girls are in the back seat, of course, because that's the safest place for a kid. And Nova kept saying, Mom, there's this light following us. Look, just like that. There's a light following us. And I'm like, Sissy, I can't look right now. I have to drive. And once we got down Rainbow Road is what we call it. I don't know what, county road it's called, but we call it Rainbow Road. I get to the stop sign. I jump out of the car and I look up, and there it is, up in the sky, this orange orb. And then months later, so at this point I'm pregnant with my son. Months later, I'm sitting there, and our house has changed so much since. It used to be a sliding glass door. Now we put windows in. But I'm sitting there, and I've birthed my son at this point, so I'm breastfeeding him. I'm looking out at the field because, again, it was like a really bright moon that night, and there's snow on the ground. This is December 2012. And I'm just, looking across the field and, looking at the shimmer across the snow and thinking about Dylan Redwine. That's how I started my Four Corners Paranormal group. Was he went missing. His dad killed him. But I'm just sitting there thinking about Dylan. We all know he's gone. He's not going to come back. He didn't run away. He would have called his mom. He wouldn't have ran away. And I'm just, hoping he's still alive. And if he is, he's safe and okay. And all of a sudden, here comes that orb. And instead of being up in the sky and looking, that big, like basketball sized, it was coming along our back fence at a slow walking pace. And as it got closer, it looks orange from a distance. But as it got closer, it looked like liquid hot magma or liquid fire flowing through it. So it was like red, orange, and yellow, red, orange, and yellow. It was pretty intense. I put my son down, grabbed my phone, tried to get it to work, like to get a picture of this thing. But I couldn't get it to work. So instead, I called my family over. So my two eldest daughters, who are now 19 and 23, and my husband, I called them over. And I'm like, look, like, do you guys see this? It was funny because me and my two girls saw the same thing, the orb with the liquid-looking fire going through it. Do you know what Vern saw? He saw what looked like, so when you look at a snow globe, looked like a glass orb. But he said there was a glowing bat of huge size in it, like it's flapping its wings at a very slow rate of speed. So that's weird, like, why did we see one thing and he saw another thing? Could be like their cloaking device or something. But yes, it looked exactly like that. It was amazing. Alright, sorry. Let's continue. And I almost went outside too, like I opened the sliding glass door and stepped 1 foot outside because I was going to get closer. But then I stepped back in because I don't know what it wanted or what its intentions were. I didn't want to get like zapped into ash or something. I don't know. And it's gone. Bye!
An orange glowing object illuminated the clouds in the sky as it ascended upwards, and as it continued to climb in altitude, it slowly began to fade away out of sight. The woman recording, along with concerned neighbors, all stared as they tried to come up with a logical explanation. Well, a few weeks later, things got even weirder when this same TikTok user spotted yet another unexplained object in the sky.
Dude, you cannot tell me that that's a lie. What the f*** is that?
I wonder where they're at.
Hell no. I want to hear in the comments, oh, somebody's pointing a laser. No, it's some shit's going on in there. Look at that.
That's not a laser.
What the f***? He's reacting weird.
Inside of a cloud, a glowing green light seemed to pulse.
We gotta circle it because we can't see it.
Whatever object this light was coming from was completely motionless and remained in the same spot the entire video. Compared to her previous sighting, these objects don't appear to be the same, and maybe the area where she lives is just a hotspot for extraterrestrial activity. Number 4. Back in 2015, a YouTube channel was created called The Slamming Door. The guy behind this channel is Polish, and his channel description reads as follows. Strange things began happening to me recently. The channel contains a record of events that I cannot explain, and it is a kind of diary of what is happening. And these are a few of the video recordings he managed to catch.
What? You see that shadow on the door? I see a shadow on the door. Looks like a head peeking out or something. That kid's gotta be like 14, 15 years old. Okay, that's it. You're messing with my music, you're messing with my emotions.
This chilling activity went on for some time before he eventually brought in a priest to bless his home. Fortunately for him, this actually seemed to calm things down. But after being out of town for a few weeks, he returned home to find this.
To jest jeszcze względnie...
Some WD-40 on that door.
To coś, żeby zrobić miejsce.
What a messy roommate. Look at that. I'd be so frustrated.
Things were now scattered everywhere across the floor, meaning this poltergeist was now back. And as time went on, things only got creepier.
Jeszcze nie teraz, jak w sobotę.
He's like getting up, pulling up his pants. I gotta get over here. I have ghosts. I don't breathe like that, but I guess it adds to the fearsome of this video. I'm scared. Don't go down the stairs. Don't go down the stairs. Don't do it. Oh, now you just broke the camera. Great.
From the activity shown to the genuine fear in his heavy breathing, I believe this is proof of an actual haunting. But as always, I'll leave that up to you to decide. Number 5.
Number 5.
TikTok user Julia Shortcake is an urban explorer who often ventures inside forgotten abandoned buildings. Recently, a friend of hers that she refers to as Jake experienced something while exploring that he couldn't explain. Jake set his sights on finding a way inside an old abandoned church. Well, after finding a way to get in, he began recording his exploration. But what he encountered later on sent him running in fear.
Okay, guys, so I'm gonna pause this again real quick, okay, old abandoned churches is bad. Okay, so churches in general, they should be alright. But once you abandon it and it's no longer hallowed ground or sacred, dark things tend to move in. We almost bought a house that was an old abandoned church, and my husband's like, come on, let's go look at it. We went over there to look, and as soon as I got in the house, it felt like somebody was stabbing me in the side of the head. I walked around and checked it out, whatever. It was really pretty, like, when you see those doll houses or those, what do they call those boards? They're really light. They make airplanes out of them. Anywho, so they carve those out to look like houses, and then on the backside it's open so you can play with your dolls and whatever. It looked like that. It was really pretty, really nice, and in an okay location. But as soon as I left the house, the stabbing in my head went away. And he's like, well, what do you think? We ain't moving in here. You do not want to live in an old abandoned church. And then my daughter, Kinsey, moved into an old Catholic church in Ignacio. Her and her boyfriend. Timmy, who I hate his guts. Anyways, they lived there, and they had some friends over, and they were drinking one night, and they decided to go up into the attic, and they found different relics, like old cassette recordings, which they just threw away. I wish they would have given it to me so I could see like what was on there. It could have been like exorcisms or something, but they threw those away. But there was also these like lava-like rocks, so it was black, kind of like onyx, but it had bubbles on them. And then there was a satanic Bible and some other stuff, and her friends took the satanic Bible and took like the bubbly rocks, and the guy was carrying those rocks around in his pocket like all the time. And she said after that, they just became kind of really weird. You know, there was something wrong with them. And not only that, so due to having paranormal experiences throughout my life, I have a form of insomnia, so it's hard for me to go to sleep because as a kid, I would just stay up and wait for something to happen because so many things did happen. But I still have issues sleeping. Like, generally my bedtime is like 4:30 or something in the morning, unless I'm really dead tired. But she was sitting there one night, and she's watching videos, and her boyfriend Timmy was sleeping. And then, all of a sudden, she said he was sitting on the floor, and he was, like, hugging his knees, and he didn't have any clothes on except for some white underbriefs. So they're kind of like boxers, but tighter. And she said they looked all, like, dirty and tattered and stuff, and he was just, like, holding his knees, rocking back and forth, and his hair was disheveled and everything, and, she was talking to him, he wouldn't answer her, so she stepped over him and went back to the bedroom, and Timmy was in the bed. So I think that was like a future reference to Timmy because, like I said, living in that house, like the friends that they used to have, something bad happened to them after they took these certain objects from the house, and Timmy was very abusive and then got hooked on coke and kind of looked disheveled, so he was probably wearing some old, nasty, tattered-ass freaking undies. But anyways, don't move in to an old abandoned church. Like, used to be hallowed ground, used to be like a righteous place to be, but once the church leaves it and it's no longer, consumed by the populace as far as practicing church, some really crazy things happen. Don't do it. That's just my recommendation.
Oh my god. These things are everywhere. It's cold as hell.
Look at the stars. I can't see very good.
No, I hear something.
Uh-oh. We're back. Sorry about that. I even got a booster box in here, so, because you can't plug in with the Ethernet cord. It's all Wi-Fi, and I'm about 15 feet from the internet box, but this room is weird. I even lose cell service in here.
I heard something.
Get in there. Go on, Ricky Bobby. Get in the dollhouse. Nice balls. Why did they breathe like that?
As Jake and friend made their way through the church, the faint sound of disembodied whispers began coming from the darkness, and one of these whispers sounded like it said the name Christy. Towards the back of the building, the guys came across an old playhouse, but while the camera was pointed at the house, the small door eerily closed on its own. This chilling moment sent the guys sprinting towards the exit, leaving us to wonder if this was a real paranormal encounter caught on camera.
Was it real?
Number 6.
Number
Ouija boards are
6.
said to be a way to communicate with spirits on the other side. But
Don't
often,
touch it.
what ends up coming through the board is something much darker. Well, a girl named Missy decided to test this out herself. Accompanied by her friend Josh, the two made their own Ouija board and lit candles around it. But as they began asking
aren't you
questions,
creative?
things got
Everyone's so
very
creative. Even if you make it yourself, don't use that shit. Stop it. Just stop it.
Right then. Lol. Maybe he's not here. Oh, we're assuming his gender. Are you male or female?
Yeah. Are you male or female?
How dare you?
Are you both?
Are you a male?
Are you both?
What's that?
It's probably just a house creaking.
No. Oh my god. No.
No, right. Close that door. Close that
god.
door.
Oh my god.
Close that door.
Oh my god.
I'm gone. No,
After asking a few
You better say goodbye
questions,
first.
a door in the back mysteriously opened on its own. But as Missy got up to close it, the door to her right suddenly flung open. The two then immediately said goodbye to the spirits and got rid of the board.
Always
and
say
this
goodbye.
is yet another example of why I always say to never play with a Ouija board.
Don't do
Number
it.
7. TikTok user Pedro RDZ is a truck driver that spends most of his time driving. One night around 1 in the morning, Pedro was headed for a road that most truck drivers try to avoid at all costs. According to urban legend, many drivers experience strange things on this road, or end up getting into an accident. Many drivers also report seeing shadowy figures standing on the side of the road. Well, as Pedro finally made it to this road, he kept his eyes peeled for anything bizarre, and his dash cam managed to catch something chilling.
What is that? No.
On the side of the road, something looked to be crouched down before turning around to look at the truck. This terrifying pale figure was a terrifying sight for Pedro, as he was already on edge with the urban legends in mind.
Looks like a little
Now,
girl.
if this was a living person, what the hell were they doing on the side of the road at 1 a.m.?
Hi. You want to play with my dolly? Number 8.
The Nevada State Prison has earned the reputation of being extremely haunted.
Nevada's
Opened in
creepy anyway.
1862, this prison was home to countless inmates responsible for unthinkable crimes. Being the third oldest prison in the country, the cold brick walls hold haunting memories from the past. Many paranormal investigators step foot inside, hopeful of what they may catch. And this is especially true for YouTube user Ghost Vexers Paranormal, who explored the prison alone.
Write that
Can you make a noise for me? Let me know where you are. Let me know where you are.
I don't think that was a ghost. I think that's just a reflection, because if you look later, you see, oh man, what's going on with the internet?
And
Nice.
A man named Jorge from the Magical Poltergeist TikTok account suddenly began experiencing strange things that he couldn't explain. One day while driving with his wife, they couldn't help but notice flickering lights.
Yes, I got tired of the Rockies. What? Oh. Oh, dang.
Hold on.
He's like, don't leave me. Don't leave me.
In the middle of the night, something or someone turned the stove on. And if we take a closer look, a shadow can be seen moving just moments before the burner. Find the bushes on. Enjoy these creepy videos. Subscribe to see more videos like this. Make sure to give it a thumbs up.
Fearsome. So, Face of Horror, guys. I'm telling you, you get a free vote every day. Yes, you can pay to vote. And if you do, the money goes to the B Plus Foundation, which is do it next weekend. I talked to a lovely lady, Miss Kelly Walters, last night, and she's going to be on our show. And